Alright. Hello, you guys. So, on today's episode, we're going to be covering the A10-9700. It's a AM4 CPU. Came out in, I believe it was July 2017. We're kind of going to figure out if this is a decent CPU in 2025 and if you should be using it, or maybe even the use cases. This processor was in like a pre-built. My buddy had it for his school. So basically, we're trying to figure out if it's worth getting just to get you on the AM4 platform. Say you're still using a AM3 Plus or an FM2, and you do want to get into the AM4 socket, and maybe you haven't switched over quite yet. It has been quite a long time since the AM4 had came out, being that it came out in September of 2016. But basically, we're looking at this chip. This chip you could find on eBay for about $10, give or take, depending on where you live. Like I said, it's basically a low-end chip that would allow somebody to get into the AM4 platform. In my opinion, it's kind of like this video is like I was wondering like why was the chip really made? Because to me, it didn't really make all that much sense. Like I said, it's a low-end chip. It allowed people that had like a small budget to kind of get in on it, which is nice. I kind of wanted to see more of that because now it's a lot harder. I mean, these chips when you go to like even Micro Center, they're not cheap. Um, yeah, they're definitely not cheap. But basically, it's got a base clock of 3.0 gigahertz. Um, Looks like it boosts up to 3.5. TDP of 65 watt, which isn't all too bad. The one thing that this had brought over from the AM3, well, it's not brought over, but it had upgraded. They're using a Radeon R7 integrated graphics solution, which is actually quite a bit better than their R5, so that was really nice. We're kind of learning as we go about this chip. Like I said, my buddy had given it to me. Basically, he no longer wanted it. It was a little slower. I had made a rig for my other buddy, and they had also noticed that it was like pretty slow. And I mean, like I said, it is an older chip. I wanted to look at like the competitors, like what would even have been around at that time in 2017. I really just wanted to look at what's like the low end, and in my opinion, the low end would have been, Athlon. So to look at our Athlon, we're trying to figure out. I'm using directly from Wikipedia to see all the dates and stuff. We got like the Athlon X4 845. This had came out on the FM2 Plus in 2016. So that was like a new, like a late end chip for the FM2 Plus. And then we got like Athlon X4 940, Athlon X4 950, and the 970. That it came out about the same time as this chip came out. Um, but really, and then they ended up coming out a full year later. The Athlon Pro 200 GE. I mean, that's probably the one that I would have picked up, or the Athlon 200 GE. That's the one I probably would have picked up if I, wanted something low end. But I'm still like I'm wondering like why would someone had purchased this specific chip in 2017? I mean, like I said, I believe it does beat out. Let's see. So it should actually beat out the Athlon 970, and it did have integrated graphics. No, actually, I'm looking at the 940. So it beats out the 940 by a bit, and it did have integrated graphics. So that might have been a reason for getting into this chip. It's a $10 chip. As far as I know, the pass mark should come out to about 16, 18 on the single thread and a multi-thread of 3,552 score. But yeah, it's kind of weird that this had came out, and we're trying to figure out if it's even worth getting now. For me, right off the bat, I'm seeing like, it's a little slower. The system's a lot slower. Uh, as soon as I thought, I'm like, well, why wouldn't someone just buy the Risen 3 or something like that? Right nowadays, 2025, you could find a Risen 3 for probably $10 more on the Facebook Marketplace. So that's probably where I would go. But I mean, this could be an option if you're just trying to get into the AM4 platform. It's got like a $10 or $15 price point. If you really just need something to like put yourself into a system that's newer, it could be an option. I wouldn't really recommend it, but basically, I'm going to show you guys why in just a moment. We're actually going to run through it. I wish I could like get you guys more comparisons. They also had not only the A10-9700, but the 9700E, which I believe was like their mobile version. Um, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that was like a mobile version. Again, it's like a quad core. It's got the CPU has 4 cores. It's got 6 GPU cores. Um, we got to see kind of around about what we would want to do with it. But yeah, let's get right into it. Let's try to see what we can get on a nice little benchmark here. All right, so we're gonna run just the CPU mark. I know. Let's talk about the specs first before we get into it. So like I said, we have the A10-9700 running at 3 gigahertz base clock and a 3.5 gigahertz boost clock. I got a quicker SSD. We have I believe is 8 gigabytes of RAM, probably some basic 2400 megahertz, and then we're looking at the R9 280X 3 gigabyte model. Granted, I'm not doing any GPU type testing or benchmarks. We're doing only CPU, so we're going to see kind of how this goes. This might get a little odd, but here we go. If you guys know, the CPU tests on here are a little weird, but this is going to be where we're going to find out kind of what it's how it performs, or at least that's how I would normally do it. And we have a pretty good I mean, this is going to be a pretty good benchmark. We're looking at the chip. I'm using my capture card, so we're using a completely separate rig to get these measurements. Um, so that I found out is like the best way to go. It's kind of like your most accurate way to go, I feel like. This way I'm not video recording through the software on the computer and then making the computer even bog down more. That always makes it worse. Maybe not by much, but it's enough. Um, Especially this is a 4 core, but if this was like a dual core and then I'm doing all this and that on the same system, it would be really bad. I'm not gonna do a heaven benchmark today. I usually do a heaven benchmark because I love the benchmark, but I just don't see a point in doing it for this, purpose. For this purpose. Let's see. So we're rocking over here. But yeah, like in my opinion, it's like I was like, why would someone not want the 220? Oh, well, the 220 GE didn't come out yet. This came out before the 220 GE. And on top of that, I'm looking at the Ryzen 3 2200G. So why wouldn't people want that chip? Pretty much the same reason. I mean, I would see the Athlon A10-9700 being cheaper at the time of release than your 2200G. I mean, the 2200G had onboard integrated graphics as well. It had Radeon Vega 8, which would have been way better at the same TDP and increased base what is it? Overclock, not the max boost essentially. Um, but like, let's see why. I'm pretty sure it didn't come out yet, so that would have been a reason why. Yeah, February 12th, 2018. So that's a chip that I would have picked up. Um, but come 2017, I mean, what are we really looking at? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, so basically, what we're looking at in 2017 was, as far as low end, we're looking at the Athlon X4, 940, 950, 970, and then the A10 9700. Um, Let's see if I can. I wonder if there's like. I'm sure there's like ones that were like for the initial release for the Risen 3, but I'm not sure. Let's see. Let's find the initial release date. Yeah. So we would have had April. April. We had the Risen 5, 1400, and then we had the Risen 3 1300X. I think if you were looking at the 1300X, it would have been quite a bit more, maybe not by much, but just a bit more expensive than this Athlon, this A10 chip, I should say. You know, there's tiers to basically it comes in tiers. So there's like the A10s, there was the Athlons, and then a tier up would have been like the Risen 3, tier up Risen 5. That's like the prices that you're kind of looking at. Just to see. I mean, let's look up what. And I mean, so for reference, that Risen 5 1400 came out in April 2017. That Risen 3 1300X came out. Apparently, the release date was around the same time as the A10. So we're looking at around the same time. You could pick either Risen 3 1300X, or you can go with an older Risen 5 1400, or you can get that A10. I mean, it really would come down to what would be the better bang for the buck at that time. What was it even going for? What was the release price? Where everything's changing. I would nowadays. I feel like that chip would probably, like I said, maybe go for a couple bucks more on Facebook Marketplace than this A10 chip. You could probably get this A10 chip for dirt cheap. Um, so yeah, the launch price of the Risen 3 1300X apparently is $129. Um, you know, just for reference, let's look. Let's see what's the launch price of the A10-9700. I'm pretty sure it was quite a bit cheaper. Not by much, but enough to be like, well, I'll think about it. It might have just been launch price. Yeah, so the introduction price started at around $79. So we're looking at difference between 129 and $79. Was that about, give or take 50 bucks? 2017, that's 15, um, 50 bucks, give or take. It still might have been in someone's thoughts, hey, maybe it is a little expensive, you know, um, it could have been a little bit expensive at the time. Would it have been worth spending the extra 50? I would say so, probably. But we're gonna get into that right now. Actually, I'll see what I can find as far as like a direct comparison. Let's do like a quick versus. This is where I would get most of my information. You could either verse them head to head, or you would put system versus system right as is. They have to be the exact same system that you're working with. Um, this way you can get an accurate reading on how well each processor is um, running. Let's see what we got here, though. All right. So, yeah, actually, apparently, let me see. I gotta check. Sometimes you gotta look around with the benchmarks. There's a few benchmarks websites. You kind of want to like look around and make sure. Um, yeah, so the Risen 3 1300X would have been a much better option for an additional $50. You're getting a little bit more on the core clock, which is cool. Um, Memory speeds, single your single core speeds a lot faster. Dual core speeds much faster. Like this is almost double performance, in my opinion, for 50 bucks more. Um, as far as user benchmark goes, there's a huge gap between these two CPUs, and I'm still at the point where it's like, well, why would someone have bought this CPU, I mean, maybe as like they say, like a stopgap, essentially to get you in to that socket at a low price or low enough. Um, Maybe you weren't as worried about that CPU when you were waiting for the next ones to come out, which would have been 2018. 2018, we had a lot of good chips coming out. But 2017, it looked like they had a rough bit of options. It just wasn't there. If I had to pick, I would have went Ryzen 3 1300X. But if you were just trying to wait until you can get something bigger, something better, then maybe the A10-9700 would have been the one, just for the time being. Yeah, it's double the performance. I mean, they came out around the same time, apparently. Um, yeah, the Ryzen 3 1300X, I would say the one thing that you could see between the two, the A10 has an APU. Well, is an APU, so it's got graphics built in. The Ryzen 3 did not. So that could have been a deciding factor. If you didn't have a GPU, then you get the A10-9700 just to get the ball rolling a little bit. Um, yeah, so that would have been it. I mean, I definitely would have picked the Ryzen 3 1300X. Max TDP, we got matching TDPs, so that's pretty good. That's kind of where I would want to be at, 65 watt. If you can go even lower, it'd be better. But yeah, I mean, the Ryzen 3 definitely. I'm still looking at it like, why would they have put out this CPU? Honestly, um, yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, let's look into it real quick. All right, so let's check out our pass mark scores. Basically, our CPU mark. It looks like we got even better um, than what the scores are that I saw. But let's go pretty much check that. We're gonna cross-reference the two. The score here. Let's see. All right, so my multi-thread rating was 3552 on, well, not mine, but the one on Passmark itself. Okay, so we got a 3895. Our single thread was 1776. The single thread on here is 1618. So we actually managed to get quite a bit better of a result than what we were getting on um, what they're getting on the Passmark website. So that's pretty good as far as that goes. But again, like I said, the Ryzen 3 option would have completely blown this one out of the water. Would this have really been an option for someone that was looking to game in 2017? Maybe 2017. Um, but now we're looking at it in a different light. Where we see that you know it's quite a bit slower than your Ryzen 3 counterpart. If you're looking into the AM4 socket in 2025, you're probably going to be better off getting a secondhand Ryzen 3 or Ryzen 5. What is nice about this chip, it does work with the A320, which is like your basic motherboard. You don't really have to update anything usually. You don't have to update the BIOS to get it working usually, which is good. Um, but yeah, overall, it's a bit of a slower chip for today's day and age. If you are looking into another chip just to get into the AM4 platform, I would recommend like secondhand Ryzen 3, Ryzen 5. You see by the scores here, like this one did a little better than the one on the actual Passmark site, but still not good enough to want to play games with and want to use as my daily rig. Um, but yeah, thanks again for watching, guys. Hopefully, I got into it a little bit. I feel like there's not enough YouTubers explaining this type of stuff, so I feel like this is kind of cool that I can put a little work and a little bit, not much effort, but like a little bit of effort into um, getting like an explanation for why the CPU was put out. Like I said, I think it was just like a low end option, um, something that was cheaper than the i3, something that competed with the Athlons at the time. Now, maybe that next Athlon in 2018 blew it out the water, but it was a competition for your Athlon CPUs. Maybe the Ryzen's it didn't hold up, but at least it was competitive at that time. But I would say this is probably not a recommendation unless you really need something and you find a great price on it. I say like $5, $5, $10, no big deal. But definitely spend the money. Look for a Ryzen chip. That's what I would do. This chip, just didn't perform as it should. At that time, you really didn't have all that much, but I would say get that Ryzen 3, get that Ryzen 5, see what's worth the money, and try to get into the AMD socket if you can, AM4 socket. But yeah, thanks again, guys, for watching. Hopefully, this was a little informational. There's a lot more information that we could speak on, but this is what I have so far. Thanks again, guys, and enjoy the rest of your week.